Hi, hello. It is Josh Bow in the dark because that is how the Mavericks make me feel. Um, it is just Josh Bow. Kirk Henderson is out for personal reasons and he needs to be away for the night. And to be honest, subjecting both of us to work after a game like tonight is probably illegal in some states, maybe all 50 states. Um, the Mavericks lost 133 to 96, 37-point loss to the Houston Rockets. This is Pod Maverick After Dark. I'm Josh Bow. I'm one of the editors over at Mavs Moneyball. I'm one of the co-hosts of this podcast. I will attempt to talk for at least 10 or so minutes or however long I can get there because we're at the point now where enough time has passed since all the decisions and news that has come out about the Luca trade has happened, and I have really no interest in talking anymore about it right now because there's nothing else to say. But on the other hand, there's nothing else really to say about the basketball team because this is just nothing. There's just nothing there. The Mavericks have now lost 7 of their last 8 games. They are now 2 games under 500. They're probably still going to make the play in as the 10th seed because the Phoenix Suns continue to match the Mavericks in loss after loss. The Suns are 3-7 in their last 10 games. The Mavericks are 2-8. So if the Suns were going to catch the Mavericks, it probably would have happened by now. And the Suns' schedule is hard, and I just don't see it happening. So the Mavericks are probably going to play at least one play-in game by default, and then that will be their season. Until then, I don't really know. You know, normally, what it's not like I've ever said. It's not like I haven't covered a bad team before. Obviously, we did these pod. I don't know if we did these podcasts when the team was bad, but I mean, I've been covering the Mavericks for so long, and during the tanking years before Luca, you definitely had some stretches where it was like this feels really pointless. But when they drafted Dennis Smith Jr., that at least meant like every game after that, you could look at something and be like, okay, at least there's something for the future. This is there's something else here. But the players that are playing for the Mavericks, there's nothing really. It's mostly veterans who we know who they are, or two-way guys that aren't. You can't guarantee you can't guarantee they're even going to be on the roster next season. And the only young player of substance that is getting any minutes that is interesting is Max Christie, and he has completely hit the wall. He is he is absolutely running out of gas right now. He started off so great, but he's blowing past any type of career high in minutes in both total minutes played and minutes per game. And his numbers reflect it. He's just fallen off a cliff with his shooting. It was expected for them to be some drop off for him because he started his Mavericks tenure. I think he made 7 of 14 on pull up 2-pointers. So basically, pull up mid range jumpers, which is not necessarily his game. And as soon as that dried up a little bit and returned a little bit more to normal, you expected his numbers to go down, and they have, but they've gone down even farther than that. And it's probably because again he is blowing past any type of total minutes load he's ever played in the NBA before, and that's going to catch up to you. And it's toward the end of the season, and it makes sense. It's not his fault. It's not an indictment on the type of player he is or what he can be. It's just kind of what it is. What it is. Outside of that, again, Dwight Powell played 20 minutes and scored 1 point. Najee Marshall was pretty good, and he's been good scoring, but outside of that, it's really hard to talk about this team. Um, Brandon Williams and Kessler Edwards are probably the most exciting things about the roster right now. And again, those are two-way guys, and there's no guarantee they're going to be on the roster next season. It's fun, it's good for them, but it in terms of how it's going to impact the Mavericks going down the road, it's really not. And it's like we could talk about it in the now, but it's just a little fleeting. But good for those guys for taking advantage of the opportunity. Edwards had 4 blocks, playing a lot of small ball center again tonight. Um, and then Williams had 25 points off the bench. He was 11 of 14 from the floor. So he was shooting the ball exceptionally well defensively. What are you going to do? The Rockets just kicked the Mavericks' ass from pillar to post. They should have. They're almost fully healthy, aside from Amen Thompson, who's out with a sprained ankle, who's obviously a big part of their team. But the stupid thing about this Rockets roster is they could just plug Tari Eason in off the bench, and he scores 30 points on 15 shots. He was awesome. They just have a cavalcade of guys coming off their roster, coming off their bench, or even in starting line. Like they got guys all up and down the roster. It's an insane talent roster. Cam Whitmore, who I believe can be a pretty good NBA player, had 10. He only played 7 minutes. Like he's not part of their team because he has a lot to work on for sure. But he is outrageously talented as a second year player who was projected to be a top 5 pick a year ago and then fell. Um, he scored 10 points in those 7 minutes on 4 or 6 shooting. Like he's very talented, and he's not even on the Rockets' radar in terms of like part of their core going forward. Um, and yeah, the Rockets did, they had 67 rebounds. They had 17 offensive rebounds. They lead the league in offensive rebounding, I believe. I believe they're like top 2 in second chance points, and they killed the Mavericks on the offensive glass. Alperen Sengun had 8 offensive rebounds by himself. The Mavericks had 6 offensive rebounds as a team. So that tells you the whole story of the game right there. The Mavericks only grabbed 34 rebounds, and it looks a little worse because the Rockets made they made 51% of their shots. They made 48% from 3. So the rebound, like there weren't a lot of opportunities for the Mavericks to grab rebounds because the Rockets were putting the ball in the basket so much. So that's part of it as well. But then when the Rockets did miss 17 off, they missed less than 50 shots. They were 54 of 105 from the floor. And they grabbed 17 despite missing, 51. They missed 51 shots, but they grabbed 17 offensive rebounds. That's a pretty good ratio right there. You're going to win a lot of games doing that. Jabari Smith is coming off the bench for the Rockets, which is insane. He's like really good, young player for them. Had 13 points and 8 rebounds. Sengun had 16 points, 15 rebounds. It was actually shocking. He was 7 to 16 from the floor because I felt like he was scoring on so many post ups. It was outrageous. But yeah, the Rockets did what they had to do. They are a very talented team near the top of the Western Conference, and they dismantled a team that can only play. They only played 9 guys, and now they're only going to be playing 8 for the foreseeable future because Dante Exum broke a bone in his left hand tonight. Left the game. It's confirmed after the X-ray that he has a broken bone in his left hand and is out indefinitely. I imagine he's probably out for the season. So now the Mavericks realistically only have about 8 healthy guys. When PJ Washington comes back, they'll get 9, but he was questionable entering tonight and didn't play. So now it's getting to the point where I think if the Mavericks had their way and their hand wasn't forced, I think they would just not play Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford, or Derek Lively for the rest of the season because the season is pretty much over. I know they've got the play-in, but they're probably not going to win the play-in game. And if they do, there's just not a lot of hope for the season with Kyrie out with the ACL. I think they would just want to play it safe and let those 3 guys not suit up again and potentially get hurt again. They're going to run into a point where they're going to have to, I don't know if those guys will actually play, but they're going to have to suit those guys up because they're going to need bodies. At least, maybe they don't play, but they're going to have to be in their uniforms and sitting on the bench because they're running out of guys. They've got eight capable guys to play in their next game unless PJ Washington comes back, and that's 9. But the worry is Kessler Edwards has 3 games left of eligibility due to his 2-way contract, and Brandon Williams has 6. I think the Mavericks have about 14 games left. The Mavericks can't sign a 10-day or minimum contract until there's 4 days left in the season because they screwed up their cap by going into the first apron with the Caleb Martin, Quentin Grimes trade. So when Kessler Edwards, after his 3 games, and Williams, so you got about, after the next 6 games, that's 2 guys that are gone. I think one of the bigs is going to have to at least pretend to be active because I don't know what they're going to do. I honestly think that they would probably love to play it safe with those guys and not bring them back this season. But I mean, there's going to be a certain point when when they run out of room with the 2-way guys and they've exhausted their eligibility, and they still can't sign a 10-day because they're in the first apron and they messed up their cap a little bit with the Caleb Martin trade. There's no other choice. They're gonna have to put some guys on the bench, maybe if they don't play, but they're gonna have to suit up. That's where things are right now. Yeah, it's bleak. Um, had a follower tell me like, all you do is complain. Why don't you go do something else with your Friday? And like, people, I need you to understand. I would love nothing more than to do anything else with my time. This is a waste. This is a tremendous waste of my time. It's a waste of everyone's time. That's not trying to disrespect the players that are trying to go out there and earn their contract, or in the case of Williams and Kessler Edwards, auditioning for a full time NBA contract. There is a certain degree of fun to watch them, but in the grand scheme of things, this is pointless. There's no point to watching this. There's nothing to glean. There's nothing to gain. They're getting their asses kicked almost every game. Like, why? If you had the choice to watch, I don't know why you would watch. I have to watch because I have to do this podcast and I have a minimum post count I have to hit for Mavs Moneyball. I would love to not do that. Like, I would have loved to not watch the game and like hang out with my wife and my kid and watch a movie or go out to dinner or do something. I missed the first half of tonight's first quarter because my daughter wanted to go for a walk, and like, are you kidding me? I'm going to tell her no. Would when we got this bullshit to watch? No, I'm gonna take her for a walk and miss the first 6 or 8 minutes of the first quarter. Absolutely, I'm gonna make that choice, but I still have to watch to some degree. So this is where we're at. So please, if I am too negative and miserable and complaining all the time, here's what you do: unfollow me, mute me, don't watch, don't listen to the podcast. Because I have to keep doing this, and if I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to talk about how I feel about it because there's not a lot about to talk about the games. So I apologize if these podcasts are a little dreary going forward, but good lord, guys, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. So again, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. You don't have to like it. I'm not going to defend it. I mean, if I wouldn't listen to this, I wouldn't listen to myself right now. It's crazy. Um, Absolutely, you're allowed to feel that way. But my advice is, instead of just yelling at me to be different, would be to just ignore me and tune me out because nothing's changing. The Mavericks schedule eases up. Eases up. I don't know how much it eases up when you consider what the roster looks right now. But it's not as hard as Phoenix's, which is why I still think the Mavericks are probably going to edge them out. But Dallas goes on a long East Coast stretch here. They're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row against the Eastern Conference. Wow, what a gift Adam Silver gave this schedule to the Mavericks to end their season, and it doesn't matter almost at all. They're going to go home against Philly. They're going to go on at Indiana on Wednesday, home against Detroit Friday, and then they've got a 4-game road trip against Brooklyn, New York, Orlando, and Chicago after that. So it wouldn't shock me if they won a handful of these next couple of games. Philadelphia is not good, and they've given up on their season. Same goes for Brooklyn. Same goes for Chicago, and they play Brooklyn twice. Orlando's on there, and they're kind of feisty, but they can't score. But we'll see. They play, even with this shorthanded roster, they play some winnable games in the next 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. Don't know where we're going to go from here. It'll be a little easier when Kirk comes back, but he shouldn't come back until he wants to come back. Like good lord. So we'll see. I'm trying to think of anything else. Like Caleb Martin. One thing I will say is it's pretty wild that in a season that the Mavericks traded Luka Doncic, that that this season is so bad for the Mavericks that I don't know if you can 100% with crystal clear clarity say that the Mavericks trading Luka Doncic away this season was the worst trade the Mavericks made this season. I would still say that's the worst trade the Mavericks made this season, but the fact that you could make a credible argument against that Goes to show you about this Quentin Grimes Caleb Martin trade. No disrespect to Caleb Martin, but I am shocked every time that that guy makes a jump shot. Watching him, that is a funky jumper. But he did make a 3 pointer tonight, so that's good. But like, man, that dude, I don't know, but he's not. He doesn't, he's looking a little healthier. He plays defense pretty hard, which is nice. But his offensive game right now, he's got a lot of rust to shake off, and that's a shame. Um, because he could be helpful if he is right. And I think he's probably still working his way into game shape. I know he's slowly easing off a minutes restriction, but that's something to watch going on. Can they get something out of Caleb Martin? Because this guy's on, he's got like 3 more years left on his contract. Like he's a part of this roster unless he gets traded for Kevin Durant this summer or he's part of the Kevin Durant trade this summer. But presumably they traded for him because they felt like he could be a piece with that long-term contract and be more viable than whatever Quentin Grimes was going to get on the open market. So presumably he is part of this thing going forward. So it'd be nice to see him do some stuff. So we'll see. Spencer Dinwiddie had a good scoring game as well. That's the only other player of note. Everyone else played like dog doo doo. Clay Thompson was 2 of 16 from the floor. Teams are just not leaving him. It's hilarious. Like watching Clay, it is so sad to see like his guy is basically just face guarding him all game, switching. He's not getting any daylight at all. It's kind of sad. Um, but yeah, there's nothing else you can really do, and there's nothing else you can really say about this game. 17 minutes. I think that's about as long as I can talk about this. We will be back. Unfortunately, we will be back. The Mavericks' next game will be Sunday, a Sunday noon game, unless that schedule got changed. I don't know. I think that was supposed to be a national televised game. I think that's still happening. Mavericks. I thought they flexed out of that game. But presumably they play the Sixers on Sunday at noon. That's what the ESPN schedule says right now. I think that was supposed to be an ABC game, but I don't think it is anymore. So we'll talk to you guys Sunday afternoon, and we'll see how that goes. That's one of the few games left on the Mavericks schedule that I think you could say maybe they win, especially if PJ Washington comes back. So we'll see. But this is it. I'm going to call it a night, guys. Go read Mavs Moneyball for whatever content we can scrape up. And thank you guys for supporting us during a time that it is really hard to figure out what to say when it is our jobs to say stuff and use words. So always appreciate the support. Thanks for anyone that's tuning in and sticking around with us. We will do our best to keep providing you guys with something. If you're going to stick around and stick in and tune into us, then that's the least that we owe you guys, is just owing you something. So we will give you something. This is Josh Bowe for Pod Maverick. Go read Mavs Moneyball. Go hug your family and be safe. Mavericks, again, lose to the Houston Rockets, 133-96, a 37-point loss to their in-division rival. They lose Dante Exum, presumably for the rest of the season with a broken bone in his left hand. But for now, he is out indefinitely. And we'll see. Again, thank you for joining us. Pod Maverick After Dark. This is Josh Bowe. Bye, guys.